Yeah, there is people say you can't make money farming. I totally disagree. You can do it. It's become so abundant that we've had to give away chickens and pigs. In a nutshell, I had mom and dad that were both convicted felons, were, put away in prison for a long time because all of a sudden they decided they were going to take 6 boys on a bank robbing spree across the United States. But even when I had a 9-to-5 job, I even convinced the people I was working for to allow me to farm at my construction job. Yeah, we knew that this place needed a lot of work, but I'm thinking, okay, I'm in my early 50s. I think I'm ready for one more adventure. I think I can do this. And what I didn't expect is that...
Welcome to the Permaculture Orchard Podcast episode. Hey, which episode? Number 1. I'm so excited. We have Michelle and Billy Bond. They came up all the way from North Carolina. That's how many hours?
14 hours.
14-hour drive. Is it worth it?
Absolutely worth it. I'm like in the middle of a York peppermint patty commercial with all the wonderful things that you just let me eat around here. The wonderful sandwiches we had, the tomatoes, the fruit. It's beyond anything either one of us, I think, have ever imagined a place like this would be.
I just wanted to know, is there a podcast that's given your backstory?
Yeah, there is. It's not a pleasant backstory necessarily, but on my podcast, it's called the Permaculture Pimpcast, where PIMP stands for Permaculture is my passion. So that way nobody gets offended. I mean, it's an acronym in it. It's a party with a purpose. And in that one, I don't know what episode number it is, but it's called something like How I Became the Permaculture Pimp Daddy. And it kind of gives my backstory as far as where I came from and how I got here. Cliff Notes version, but
okay.
Yeah, that's...
We'll put in the description, in the show notes, we'll put a link to that episode because that's nice, but we don't have to redo it if you've done it.
We've done it, but in a nutshell, classic example of a kid of mixed race where I came from. And in a nutshell, I had mom and dad that were both convicted felons, were, put away in prison for a long time because all of a sudden they decided they were going to take 6 boys on a bank robbing spree across the United States. So they basically spent time in prison. We were raised by our grandmother. This sounds like something straight out of Raising Arizona, but I swear it's the truth. My dad had a thing for robbing KFCs, and he would literally walk out of there with a bucket of chicken and a bag of money saying, "The Colonel's been good to us." So yeah, they did time in the clink because of that. So we were raised by a very loving grandmother, a very modest place. But honestly, we may not have had the things that everybody else in this world thought were important, but we had love. And at the end of the day, that was the most important thing. So it was a very normal life for us boys until they got out of prison and we went back to them. So yeah, it's something of a comedy skit, and at the same time it's a lesson of what not to do with your life and how, if you decide to make the right decisions right now, you can change your life on a dime. Because I was on my way to becoming one of those people, and thanks to the good Lord and a good wife, I live a life now that's everything, is beyond anything I thought I would ever hope it would be.
Michelle, you were saying you grew up not that far away from here. We're right near the New York State border. You were at the other edge of New York, not the northern edge, the southern edge?
Southern edge, thank goodness, yes, because the winters up here, I've heard, yeah.
It's real winter here.
Yes, you do get real winter, yeah. So
how did you happen to meet this guy then?
So we met I joined the Army right out of high school. He joined the Army, and we met in Fayetteville, North Carolina, on the east side of the state, Fort Bragg.
She's going to get this totally wrong. I got to interject here because we always talk about, well, how did you meet? Well, first of all, I was coming back from water skiing one day. She was walking to the Burger King on Fort Bragg, and I yelled out the window. It's not cool to do cat calls now, but I did one back then because here it is. I'm looking at this girl that's got more curves than a goat pass crossing this street over to a McDonald's, or Burger King rather. And I'm like, I got to meet her. So went over there, laid out some of that rapier wit. And next thing I know, I didn't know she was going to be the one right then and there. You want to know how I knew she was the one for me?
How'd you know?
She was she had this car, one that had way too much power for her. It was a Chevelle. And she's going to say this story didn't go down this way, but I know for a fact that it did. I had just gotten out of the field in the Army, and I'd been out there for a long time. I came back. She was my girlfriend at the time. And I was like, man, I'm starving. I don't want to eat more Army chow. She's like, I'll go to the store and I'll go to Burger King, which was the only thing nearby, off post, and I'll get you something. I'm like, cool. So I go in there, take a shower, get off all the camo paint, and then realizing that, good night, man. It's only 30 minutes away, but it's going on an hour. She's not back. Then it's going on an hour and a half, then 2 hours. She's not back. And so I'm starting to think, man, is it really that busy at a Burger King? And then in the barracks, which I was living in at the time, I'm hearing these guys saying, man, did you see that chick down there? The car's burning right there in front of her. And I didn't think anything about it. Well, hours later, she comes walking in completely like she had seen a ghost. And I knew that the girl those guys were talking about in the barracks were her. But you want to know how I knew she was the one? Because she still had that bag of Burger King despite... I'm like, this whole car is burning down, but she had the presence of mind to get that Burger King bag out of there. I don't eat Burger King anymore, but she had the presence of mind to get that Burger King bag out of that burning inferno of a car and bring it to her boyfriend. The second I saw her walk into that barracks, I knew that's the one.
You don't believe any of that.
That's exactly how that story went. That's exactly how it went.
Hey, I get it. I knew my wife was the one for me when I said, we're going for frog legs today. She said, okay. We went hunting for frogs. We made up a mess of frog legs, went to the local chip place to get a thing of French fries. And I was like, this girl wanting to go hunt frogs. And I thought, yep, that's a good enough one for me.
Wow.
Absolutely.
See, when you said frog legs, I thought you meant you were going to take her to a restaurant that had frog legs. But the fact that she went out there gigging for frogs, you mean she actually gigged the frogs
we
with
were
you?
shooting them with a pellet or 22.
Okay, that's even more brutal. So you had to know that she was, wow, 1 in a million.
And it was and she wasn't afraid of cleaning them. So I said, okay, that's a winner.
Okay, well, that's news. I thought you guys were vegetarians, so I didn't know that frogs were on the menu.
Frogs, yep. Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I've eaten lots of reptiles and amphibians and all kinds of stuff. But honestly, it's not every day you're going to find a girl that through a burning inferno of a classic U.S. muscle car would manage to grab my Burger King bag. Did you have the drink too? I don't know if you had that.
I didn't have the drink or the meal.
She had the meal. I guarantee it. She, for some reason, has blacked this part out. But it was right then and there I knew I got a winner.
This episode is proudly brought to you by my very own masterclass. Use code POP250 to save $250 off the masterclass bundle. Masterclass contains 11 different courses that you can buy separately. However, the complete masterclass has you covered from A to Z, and it's really my life's work. Masterclass is the ultimate tool to help you start a successful permaculture orchard replanting. Not sure about how to start, or maybe you've already started, but now you feel you're stuck. Purchasing the masterclass gives you access to the VIP group, where you'll be able to meet other like-minded, very interesting permaculturists and bounced ideas off each other. The VIP group is where I spend most of my time answering questions, and it's never been easier to get in contact with me or ask me a question. Want to learn more? Go to permaculture.study and start each course today for free. Don't forget to use code POP250. It'll save you $250 off the masterclass bundle. And now back to the episode.
Got to ask you some questions about the farm.
Mm-hmm.
How long has it been that you've been in North Carolina on that property?
This November will make 4 years
Right.
at this particular property, but until before then, we started off in the preparedness world, and then the natural conclusion of a preparedness, at least in my world, because, you know, the Y2K thing and all that, I was one of the people, the dopes out there that was actually believing a lot of the nonsense that was being told out there. So I'm thinking, oh, shoot, we got to get prepared. So we were not long out of the military, and okay, that came and went. And then all these other things that were going on in the world, those came and went. And I was like, man, this seems like a really good life. If, in the words of my friend Jack Spirko always says, that if times get tough, or even if they don't. But what really, really brought it home to us was 2008, when the financial crisis happened there. The only jobs I could find on planet Earth were in countries that most people do not want to go to. So that really, really woke us up. She'd really come from a farming background, and I didn't so much. I came from a criminal background. And so, when we put all this stuff together, we were like, okay, where do we want to do this? I was getting on the farm business, so we started out in Oklahoma, then Kansas, then Texas, and another part of Texas. And then we ended up, a series of unfortunate events occurred in Texas that made us think that, maybe we should go find where we think is paradise. So we got in a vehicle and we drove until we ended up in western North Carolina, right there in the mountains at about 3,000 feet. And to us, would I be overstating it to say that it's nothing short of paradise to us?
Yep, for us it is.
Yep. So we got as far as that, and we're like, okay, enough of the nomadic lifestyle. We are going to, instead of just finding a place, building it up, moving on, and we're like, enough of this nomadic lifestyle. We are going to absolutely, positively build our permanent home right here. And that's exactly what we've done. And we love it there. And it's, as I was telling you before all of this, to us, it couldn't be more perfect. In the summer, it's t-shirt weather. In the winter, it's t-shirt weather. No humidity. And it's perfect. I mean, you've got to battle the extreme slopes and stuff like that. But despite all that, despite wishing, there's a certain degree of jealousy when I'm here, because I'm like, good night. I only wish it was this flat again. But at the same time, the mountains create some real beauty and character and difficulty, but I think it's worth it. Wouldn't you agree?
So for people who are starting out, they're driving like you were driving, and what were you looking for? What did you have criteria? Did you have anything in mind, say, to find my paradise? What was it that you were looking for?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because as I was growing up in Oklahoma, now she grew up in New York. Oklahoma's as flat can be. And I would drive, even as a kid, as soon as I got a driver's license and I got a vehicle, I would drive an hour away to this little hill that they call a mountain down in Lawton, Oklahoma. And it was at that moment, I was like, man, I love anything that has extreme topography, particularly mountains. And so when I was in the Army, stationed in North Carolina, I re-enlisted just to get stationed in Colorado at Fort Carson, where there are huge mountains. And I was always drawn to the mountains. So that was definitely a big criteria. And being in all the other places we've lived since, there was never any real terrain. We were always looking for something flat. So number one, it had to be mountain. We had to have at least mountains in the distance, but preferably in the mountains. That was number one. Number two, which should have been number one, is water. And because we have 1 foot in the preparedness world and 1 foot also in the permaculture world, and the two for us are really joined. So there had to be water. Well, we live in a temperate rainforest where we are in North Carolina. So water comes very easily in a place like that, almost so easily, in fact, that you can abuse it if you're not careful, which we see a lot of our neighbors do. Also, we were hoping to find a place that had something of a food culture, because where we were in places in Kansas, not so much in Kansas as it was in Texas, but there was absolutely, so you can grow a permaculture orchard as you have here, but you're not going to sell it where we lived before in places. So we also had to have a food culture that knew what to do with these high-end things. So, of course, being a butcher also, I know that the best meat is never going to be found in the grocery store. So if I'm going to raise chickens, let's say, that aren't, let's say, Cornish cross, if I want to raise poulet rouge or something like that, if I want something high-end, I need to have a place, a base, where I can actually move that stuff. So when we got to just 45 minutes north of Asheville, North Carolina, we had all of those things. And so immediately, we went out, when we got there, we found a realtor, and literally the first thing we looked at, I said, I'll buy it. And it got that way because, well, we actually looked at other things, but I knew I was sold on the first one because I saw the stack of other realtors that had been in this place showing people the property. And it was partially because I knew, because of the nasty, rugged terrain that most people would see, I knew nobody would want it. And I knew it was highly abused. People had more cows there than should have ever existed on that property. And because it was abused, I knew that I could get it for a bargain. And I also knew that we had the skill set in this magnificent design science we call permaculture to take anything, no matter how denuded, like, you know, what you were telling me about this place here. I knew that we had in our toolbox everything we needed to transform that place to a mess into what it's becoming right now. And it's really something else. Were there any, outside of just getting out of Texas, what was your criteria?
Well, see, that was the thing. We were trying to figure out, like, because we love the mountains, but we had lived in Colorado, and in the West, you have, it's arid, but you also have a lot of laws regarding water in the West. So that is not, we knew that wasn't going to be a possibility for us. So we never even considered Western North Carolina, the mountains. So we drove there and we loved it. So that's where we stayed.
So it really sounds like a love at first sight. You look at it, see it.
It really was. It really was. I mean, just like when she walked in with that Burger King bag, that's exactly how I felt when I saw this property. I'm like, I saw, okay, maybe not as excited as the Burger King bag, but no, immediately we noticed overnight, immediately, because the place was absolutely decimated. All the trees that remain right now were in such bad shape that we knew 80% of them they were dead or dying. And plus we could also tell that all the things that you would look for in a productive, healthy forest were not there. There were monocrops. And the cows that had such access in there, they had destroyed the root systems so badly that we're like, good night, man, what are we going to do? So yeah, we knew that this place needed a lot of work. But I'm thinking, okay, I'm in my early 50s. I think I'm ready for one more adventure. I think I can do this. And what I didn't expect is that it would be something of a mecca of all the people around there that have property every bit as abused as the one we have. And I didn't expect that so many people would be, I didn't expect that they would want to find holistic solutions to man-made problems, which every one of these were. So whether it was spray, whether it was which seems to be we have a homesteading tsunami right now, at least in the States. And what we're seeing is that the natural compulsion of most people is to go out there, get a bunch of animals, not start out with one, master it, and then move on. But what we're finding out is that people are realizing, hey, I don't have to go out there and get the entire farm at once. We can start with one thing, master it, and then move on to another. So maybe you start with chickens. Understand them well, at least to the point where you're conversational. Then maybe you want to get sheep. Then you want to graduate into pigs. Maybe you want to take it on and get cows. So we're using this place as something of a demonstration site. A lot of what you have here, and I'll be honest with you, you've been a massive inspiration for us through your videos, through your YouTube channel, and I can only imagine through your podcast. It's been a massive inspiration for us at that time when we were thinking, okay, I got this permaculture knowledge. How do I put it all together? How do I put it in a cohesive way? So we saw your Permaculture Orchard video, which was paradigm changing. It really was. It really was. And so we took that, combined it with information we learned from other people like Jeff Lawton, Elaine Ingham, Mark Shepard, all these other people, and then have made something of a, I'm not arrogant enough to think that I've created anything, but basically taken what we thought were the best elements of all these systems, and it was yours that is at the pinnacle. We use your NAP method. We use your trios methods. We use basically your guild method. All those things, combine them into our place, that's structured a little bit differently because our topography is a lot different than here. But essentially, a lot of what you have taught, we've adopted. And now we're really, just after going on 4 years, we are seeing an abundant harvest of things using your methods. Maybe not perfectly. I know that there's things that we're missing the boat on, obviously. But using your methods, we've now produced some serious bumper crops. And can't thank you enough. And I can't thank you enough for being on here. And can't believe that I'm actually on the first episode of your podcast. So this is like getting money from home without writing.
As we were talking before, I was very excited when I saw your videos on training trees. And because I know here we're used to it because people have been exposed. This is a French part of Canada. And we got people from France coming to teach us that. So it's well known and well established, at least in the orcharding sphere. But I realized, I've done it, and it's like, yeah, this is the information. This is the most updated, the most recent, and this is what really works. But when I saw your videos, I thought, wow, yeah, that's right. If you can really reach the English audience, which hasn't been exposed for the most part, I see videos on pruning, and I mean, I can't help but go like this because so much of the information out there about pruning and especially training is just the telephone effect of the stuff that's been in the books for 50 years. And where'd you learn it? Well, I learned it from that book. Yeah, but that's information that was good 50 years ago, but it's progressed. The learning has advanced, and the ideas that the people from France taught us, it really goes far beyond that, because now it's brought an understanding of how the tree works. So when you were going through and just explaining, yeah, you're going to start off with a tree. And you know what? And this year it's great because you see these branches that this spring were like this, and now they're all the way down here. Well, the fruit will do that, but you can also simulate it by training, even if it's not a big production year. But the more people who can get that, and then like we're looking, you don't see it, but we're looking at a whole block that has never been pruned. So I used to even say, well, if you're going to have fruit trees, you have to prune. But the more people who get people exposed to the ideas of understanding how a tree does and why it does, it's such valuable information that is really not out there, and certainly not out there in the English sphere. So I'm really glad you're doing that and making it known more.
Well, I try to lead them right back to you because I know that I'm not doing it perfectly, but I don't want perfect to be the enemy of good. And got to say, that was another thing that was paradigm changing to me, because there was always this nebulous thing about pruning with so many other people that have taught it. Well, it was like this intuitive thing, but there's no way to teach that. But with your method, I'm thinking, okay, clear the chimney. I understand that. These branches should be like this. I can understand that. How do I select those branches? You taught me that. How do of the branches I have, what do I do with them after I have them? Learn that from you as well. And then I'm like, okay, now for the first time ever, because the frustration I had, and so many other people too, is like, is there a systematic approach to doing this? And until I found your work, I didn't know that there was. So I was just beating my head against the wall with such frustration. And so I'm like, okay, there is a systematic way. So when I saw that, I was like, I'm going to memorize everything this guy's talking about. And I did. And so when I started making videos on this stuff, because long before we had a YouTube channel, we were already putting this stuff to work. We were seeing the benefits of it. And it's, you always wish you had a YouTube channel 10 years prior, because we were already doing this stuff. And then when we got a channel, I was like, okay, man, I wish I could go back and show them all this other stuff that we've done, but can't do that now. So because I can't show them, hey, this is how this tree was. I started doing this, and my goodness, it blew up. And through your work, and hopefully I'm doing it some kind of justice. We do so many different things, not just orchard work or food forest work or any of those things. We have a wide variety of the things we teach. But I know that one thing, the biggest portion of what I'm able to convey out there to people that are new to this space, got it from this man right here. So I'm the permaculture pimp daddy, but he's the pimp daddy of pruning. So
And I didn't get it. It wasn't my ideas. Yeah, I had that exact same reaction. When I did a 1-week course with these two researchers from France, and it was like, why didn't somebody explain us this? Well, nobody had, because they were the ones who developed it. And to me, that was the thing. I had been teaching pruning with that same reaction. Was, it's intuitive. You do this, well, without a clear
right.
reason and answer. When I saw that, I thought, that is simple. I mean, that's 1, 2, 3. Just do those 2 or 3 things, and boom. And then they even taught basically what this orchard block is, which is, they called it salsa, which is a system of free trees without any intervention. And it's like, really? I always heard that if you have fruit trees, you have to prune them. Well, if they've been pruned in the nursery, then you may need, but if you plant a young tree, a young whip, and you let it go, which all these were, they all take on their own form. And you know what? It's like, I look at how much work has gone into these, almost zero. We did prune a little last year just so we could get through. And that was the first kind of pruning after more than 10 years, just so we could go, because as they load down with fruit, some of them would absolutely bar the way. So we just removed some of those branches just to give us access, which is an important one. You were talking a bit about permaculture. How'd you get into, and did both of you get exposed to it at the same time?
About to me, I came at this initially from a position of fear. Partially the way I was raised, there was a lot of fear, as you can imagine, in a family of 2 convicted felons. There's a whole lot of fear going around. So I exploited that and got initially into the preparedness movement. But what I saw in there were all these gaps. Like, you'd have one guy that was in the guns. I'm like, okay, I'm a soldier. I kind of get the gun thing. Then you'd have another person who's in the radios. And then you have all these different blocks. But I was like, surely there is a unified field theory to preparedness. So then I heard this magic word called permaculture. And I'm like, hold on. Let me hear this. So when I heard this, I was like, okay, so we got 3 ethics: earth care, people care, and abundance given to the previous 2. I'm okay with that. Then when I heard the prime directive of this permaculture, which in a nutshell is, and I'm not going to quote it exactly, but it's basically, at this moment, at this space and time, take immediate ownership of everything you and your family do and fail to do. Own that, find out where the gaps are, and complete it. So I'm like, well, that kind of sounds like a preparedness quotient to me. So as I started to manage my own fear, foolish fear at that, started to realize, you know what, it makes a whole lot more sense to go ahead and maybe look into this design science where we take care of our housing, our zones, our fruit, our animals, in such a way to where, A, there's no waste, or very, very little waste, and even the waste of our animals and ourselves are even accounted for. I was on board. I was hooked. Now, for her, the story might be a little bit differently, but I'm sure it's going to unfold a little differently. But for me, this was like, it was like the sun coming down from the sky, and I was like, I am going to structure my life in any way possible. Remember that prime directive: take immediate action for yourself and everything your family does and fails to do. I knew right then and there, this is where my life will go. And I will do everything humanly possible to make it to where this is my full-time career, where every single day of my life, I wake up every morning and I do exactly so it took some work. So I had to yank myself. We devised a plan. So at the time, it was myself, my wife, and my son. So we're like, okay, well, how do we manage getting out of the matrix? Okay, we've been in here. We never liked it. So how do we extricate ourselves from this? So we started first with her, then my son, and then I picked up the rear like any good platoon sergeant. So that's how we did it. So it was like, and we used permaculture every step of the way. We started at, in humble ways, but even when I had a 9-to-5 job, I even convinced the people I was working for to allow me to farm at my construction job. So I literally began a food forest using your methods on a job which still exists today, right, in small town Texas, in Sherman, Texas. Made a permaculture orchard out there, even ran chickens on this job. It was a commercial. These people lost their ever-loving mind. When I ran chickens and I planted trees, they're like, okay, cool, I can see how this works. And then I just casually said, hey, you think I can run chickens out here? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Well, I built a chicken tractor on the job in my spare time, got chickens, raised them up in a brooder, integrated them into this entire landscape on the job. So at first they were losing their minds, but at the same time, over time, I made converts of the 135 guys that were in that shop. I was indoctrinating them to a certain extent to this magnificent design science. So then I realized, hold on, this is absolutely contagious. Maybe I should tell more people about this. So that's exactly, I'm sorry about the long-winded answer, but I'm sure she has another path to permaculture. How did you get there, honey?
Well, I was going to University of Kansas at the time when I first heard about it, but I could never get a clear answer of what permaculture was. So I was interested in it, but I was also studying at the same time, and they don't teach it at colleges. So you have to go outside of college to get the education. And I was in the middle of studying, so I just kind of put it on the back burner. But like one of the things that bothered me about it was I was like, okay, what is it? And you can't ever get a clear definition of exactly what it is. So then in Texas, fast forward a few years later, we were in a situation where we were able to go get our PDC. You did it first, and then William did it, and then I took Jeff Lawton's online PDC. But
Yeah, so it was really awesome because as a family we did it, and then our son eventually ended up working with Jeff Lawton down in Australia at Zaytuna for a while. So it's kind of awesome in that one of the problems we ran into before is that when we would team up with people, or at least have some partnerships, we're speaking one language, but they're speaking something very different. So collaborations were tough in the beginning because we were like, well, no, we don't need 7 dust on this. You may have a loss or two the first couple of years, but we just need to figure out how to make really great soil. So from that, it was like studying your work, everything that you came out with. We were Johnny on the spot. Anything I would see, there's probably 20 different permaculture teachers that we were like, I've got to learn everything they're talking about. And so it was like, okay, what can I find is useful? I would read a whole book and maybe find 2 things out of that book that I thought were helpful, but I thought it was worth the investment of time. So as a family, we basically all got invested, and we're like, okay, this is what we want to do. I guess we better find out a way to make it pay. So we started a lot of different things in terms of how to make the permaculture world pay for us, and we do it in very unconventional ways. But yeah, there is people say you can't make money farming. I totally disagree. You can do it. It's become so abundant that we've had to give away chickens and pigs because they are actually the byproduct of the orchards we're putting in. So we're like, okay, they got fat on other things. They got to harvest weight with other things that may be byproducts, like, things that I see standing around me right now. So permaculture has been the answer to it was a dream. I wish I had learned about it when I was my son's age. And then, because he did learn it so early, he retired essentially at 26. You could say I call retirement spending every day doing what it is you love to do. So my son, because we were able to pour all of our knowledge into him and him to take this permaculture through, what is he doing? He's basically doing a lot of consultations and stuff like that. And then also the things we do on the farm, he's been able to retire into the career that he feels like he was put here to do. So it's been a blessing all the way around for us. A massive way.
My favorite question is, knowing what you now know, if you had to do it over again, what would you do today?
Rethink the people I trust. Okay. One of the most colossal mistakes we've made, and we made it more than once, more than twice, is thinking that just because they are family, that they are going to do what's in their best interest, or they're going to do what's in the collective best interest. Well, we've learned the hard way that that's not exactly the case. But you got to also remember, my family put the funk in dysfunctional. So maybe there's that too. But it was also the thinking that because we're all in this together, that they're going to want to put as much work and effort and education that we did. And then realizing that not everybody's built that way, because what we ended up finding out was that, it's like that Snoop Dogg song, I got me some Seagram's gin, everybody got their cups, but they ain't chipped in. And that's what would happen. We wait till harvest time, we put in all the work raising these chickens, these pigs, cows, you name it. And then all of a sudden they show up for harvest like, hey, where's my share? Well, you weren't here for any of it. But we ran into this over and over. So we'd try it with family over here, disaster. Tried it with family over here, disaster. What do you think? I mean, if we had it to do over again, maybe surely you would see it differently, honey.
I think it's hard to answer those questions because everything has gotten you to this point. If something had changed, I don't know if we would be right here. Maybe we would, but maybe we wouldn't. I mean, I think that there's things like that I look back on where I'm like, well, if this hadn't happened, I would be, maybe at this point, but you never know. So I think one of our big lessons that we've learned lately is to start looking to just in our immediate family to work together. Like, we're not going to look so much to other people. We can do a lot just with our own immediate family. So, I mean, I think that's been one of my biggest things is, just like we have everything we need within our family to do what we need to do.
There was a lack of confidence to a certain extent also. We're thinking, oh, shoot, this seems so monumental. We need to recruit people to help with it. And then we come to find out that this was my dream. This wasn't their dream. They want the results, but they didn't want to put in the hard work. And there's a lot of tough work in the beginning when it comes to some of this stuff. And I just made too many assumptions. I assumed that I'm also expecting people to keep their word. I'm not realizing that their minds are going to change over time and not appreciate that to the extent that I should. That's one thing we made a colossal mistake on, but we've talked about it numerous times, Michelle and I, where even though there have been some heartbreaking developments, it led for growth in every single time where it just thought, man, this feels like betrayal, or this feels awful. If all those things didn't happen, like she said, I don't know that it would have led to where we feel, and I absolutely love my life. I love what I do. Are there portions of it you would change? Absolutely. But the journey was worth it. And I don't think for a moment we've arrived. I feel like we're only getting started.
You both kind of touched on the whole point of hardships. And, you say hardship, people, I'm not a big fan of hardships. But yet, if it wasn't for some of the hardships, you would not have grown. So is there one or two examples of you go, you know what? This thing, it was brutal. This was hard. I wanted to quit. I wanted to give up. I mean, it's a hardship. Is there something that now you look, because it's always easy when you're through the valley and you're back up on the mountaintop, but those times of really being in the valley.
I mean, I don't know if I can pick out any one thing. I think the whole farming can be difficult. And then when you do it with some people, you realize, I mean, I think that I don't know what I'm.
I'll go with it. You want two concrete examples, yeah, of some really hardship where, when in the depths of it, you don't possibly see your way out of it. And there was a time where we found ourselves homeless. I would say that. So we had to literally, when I say homeless, I mean like no place to live at all. We were at this point where we achieved an enormous amount from the typical standard American dream, which to me is a nightmare, and to her it always was. And you give that up to go adopt this lifestyle. You go into it with a certain understanding with other people, and this kind of hits on the thing before, and then you see a level of betrayal, and it doesn't, you see a level of dishonesty in people that if you're not careful, you could honestly start to think the whole world's this way. And they aren't, because there are some wonderful people in this world, but when you feel like you've been betrayed, and frankly, I've lost probably hundreds of thousands of dollars trusting the wrong people. And that hurts in a massive way, especially, they say blood's thicker than water. Well, I add to that, money's thicker than blood to some people. And so it's amazing, as she and I were talking about on the way here, in fact, how little it takes for certain people to sell you down the river. You're thinking, okay, well, they sold out Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. I guess I shouldn't expect more than that. But for how little people will betray you for just a few dollars, when if you would have just stuck with us and hung in there, you could have achieved so much more than what your price was. So yes, it's that betrayal, and then finding ourselves literally at one point in time, largely, well, no, in all actuality, homeless. So broke that I had to borrow money from my own son to hit the road as a journeyman electrician to make money with no guarantees. I'm going out there on a wing and a prayer as an IBEW journeyman electrician, hoping I can find work at the end of this rainbow of this money I borrowed from my son. Because we put everything we had, lost literally everything in this. So you feel betrayed, and it's like I'm aggravated, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, but then I find myself finally making a little bit of money, but I'm still back on that hamster wheel that I wanted to get away from. But it was a matter of refocusing my mind and knowing that I have a wife that every penny that I'm sending back home, I know she's doing the right thing. So she bought a piece of land. We bought a piece of land. And then slowly but surely, we got ourselves a fifth wheel. Okay, we're living in that. Or at least she was, because I was on the road for 7 months straight at this particular stretch. And then I'm racking up more money. She's putting it into infrastructure. So then, bam, we buy, because our first copy of the Permaculture Orchard Beyond Organic was lost with the people that robbed us from before. So we were able to buy that all over again, put in another permaculture orchard on this new piece of ground. But it was like a phoenix rising from the ashes, at least in I know that seems over dramatic, but that's really what it felt like. So we were betrayed there, and then that sucked. But we were also betrayed the time before that. So I'm like, okay, well, I feel like Charlie Brown, like that guy kicking that football, having it yanked out from under me, only to find out that, you know what, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because instead of being jaded, instead of both of us being jaded on thinking, good night, the whole world is just full of these very untrustworthy people, and particularly some of them that might happen to share your last name. You find these things out and you're realizing, okay, I got two ways here. I can go proactively search. Like you were describing earlier, you're very picky about the fruit you eat. Well, I'm very picky about the people these days that I'm going to call family, because DNA may dictate that I got a certain group that's family to me. But you know what? I can actively select whether or not I want to eat this apple, or whether or not I want to go out there looking for the perfect one. So that's what I do now, and that's what we do as a family, where I haven't always been successful, but trying to find those people out there, and they're out there. They really are, no matter where you came from. being a lot more selective. Like the way you pick your fruit is the way I pick my friends these days. And it was all those things. It was mostly relationship problems that we've assumed.
I've never had a problem with the work. Like
The work's always been easy. Yeah.
The work has never been the problem. It's the people that the people management that is the problem. That's the hard part.
It's just honestly the number one and number two. You want two good examples? Well, for us, and it's mostly my fault because she would give me warning signs right on, like, I don't think we ought to be trusting this person. And over and over and over again, this is why doctors don't treat their own families, because you marginalize the information you were given. She was right, my son was right, and I was like, let's go ahead and take this. And then bam. So now I don't trust myself regarding certain things. I'm exceptional at certain things, but management of what, I'll put it this way. When her spidey senses go up, I pay attention. Since we've been doing that, okay, well, guess what? We're not getting ripped off anymore.
Well, it's not that it's not going to happen. It's just, you just become more discerning is all.
Well, that's what we pray for, is discernment and wisdom, and seeking out those folks that are more aligned, and then realizing that, but, going back as far as all those things were lessons, like you were telling me earlier, you have a long list of things of what not to do, mistakes. Well, that's exactly what we've done. But until you put yourself out there and risk making these colossal mistakes, you're not going to move forward. You're going to have to burn the ship, so to speak, to find out. You're going to have to get to that other side, to get to that next level. You're going to have to risk everything. And sometimes that means, do I want to trust this person? Or something that we've learned is that instead of putting all the eggs in that basket, have a limited partnership. Like, okay, I'm going to trust you with this particular job, and you'll be paid on the basis of that job, not a long-term, let's move in together, let's create this together, only to find out that you're more polished than spit and more glitter than grit when you get down to brass tacks. That's actually, I learned that from a Canadian football coach, by the way.
I was going to say, I've never heard that expression. But
my brother used to play in the CFL years ago, and it was a coach. He played for the Hamilton Tiger Cats back then, and it was a coach that he heard it from, and I kind of adopted it, but I thought it fit.
So going from the lower points, let's move to the higher points. So if you now, having done many different things and just hearing your background, I mean, geez, gone through a lot, done a lot. What are the things that you wake up and you go, oh my gosh, I'm so glad to be able to do this? And how much of it are you actually doing?
Why don't you tell him what you know? You already know what I'm going to say is the highlight of every single day.
You can tell him.
Is it the same for you too?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be different?
It probably is, yeah.
The sound of silence. Let me explain. And you'll know this if you've ever done any kind of animal management. You'll see the behavior of an animal when you put it on new ground, new pasture, the way it behaves. Like every single day, I get excited and I'm jumping out of bed, and I'm excited to take on the day because I know that I'm going to move sheep out there. They're going to be put on new pasture. And to me, is the same feeling, I guess, what people get when they go to a rock concert or when they jump out of a plane or when they do anything that's exhilarating to them. To that to me, I start my day with the most exhilarating thing, is because I know, you can see in the body language, it doesn't matter the animal. It really doesn't matter whether it's pigs, chickens, cows, sheep. It doesn't matter. When you put them on new pasture, they're like, this is where I'm supposed to be. You watch them graze, you watch them browse, whatever the case may be. And every single day, she hears me. And that's why when he asked the question, I was like, this is not hard for me. But it's those simple, I know a lot of people are out there are going to say, well, what's so awesome about that? What is great about that? To me, that's the beauty of this the little things. It's those little things out there. Seeing, let's say an apple hit the ground, or I got that in many places people would say, "Oh, I'll throw it in the trash." Well, I got animals that will eat those things. I got animals that will turn that into eggs, that will turn that into bacon. They can turn it into or I can turn it into compost, because we're pretty good at that. And it's always knowing that I'm going to start the day moving those animals. We were just talking about this on the way here. Like, man, I really miss that. I miss it. It's not what other people view as work. I view as fun. And anybody can do it if you just kind of structure your life and your day around those things.
100%, because I've been there, I've done that, and I miss that. I always, even, we only have a few little geese, but having animals and giving them that fresh break, it's really, it's very, I mean, I always felt a little guilty, like I'm here for half an hour just watching them, because it's so pleasant. It's so relaxing. I mean, it's not a hardship. And you realize there's a lot of people who are out there starting their tractor, doing this. The tractor doesn't start. Now it's just to what? To feed them, when all you have to do is give them an area, and with great delight. And even if it's picking up fruit that are on the ground, you go, I could spend 2 hours picking up this fruit, or I could give them this for a day, and they will absolutely delight in doing it. Yeah, animals. So if I were to classify, would you see yourself more as an animal person, a plant person, or a people person?
I'd say all the above, because I don't see them as separate. I see them as one ecosystem, so to speak. And I think that's the beauty of permaculture, is that you don't necessarily, we tend to think in a reductionistic worldview in our Western way of thinking. But in the Eastern way of thinking, they look at things as systems thinking, where, for example, let's say you got high blood pressure. Well, the doctor is going to give you lisinopril. Well, Eastern doctor is going to say, well, why do you have high blood pressure to begin with? So the way the Native Americans would have looked at this, which is part of my heritage, is they would have asked, they didn't see themselves as separate from the land. They believed that they were part of it, that they belonged to it. And I believe, and I think that's part of what we're getting back to, I don't see a separation in any of it. I think they should all coexist, that each can harvest from one another. They can harvest from what I like to think is maybe a little more brain power, to show them where they might best manage. But they can also help me by producing the things I need to survive. So I don't know that I don't necessarily see a hierarchy. I like to think that to a certain extent I'm at the top of the food chain and can at least call the shots to a certain extent. How do you see it?
I think I'm an animal and plant person by far.
She's definitely there's certain jobs on the homestead that I have to do,
it's not even just that.
Yeah.
It's just like the wonder every year of everything coming back to life, and then actual planting a seed and it turns into something that produces hundreds of pounds of stuff you can eat is.
Well, to be more specific, she's more into the annual side of things. I'm more into the perennial and the tree side of things. And then my son, I mean, it's amazing how we all kind of have our little place, but we're all cross-trained in what the other one does. So when we leave, like right now, our son is able to do all of it, much to his delight. Actually, it's pretty organized, so he can work that out pretty well. So he's getting that done with our niece. And also we all have these little parts and pieces that we belong to, but we're all very conversational in the other parts that the other, like basically in her annual things, it's like, hey, stay out of the way. But I'm in charge of the trees, but she's also got a piece of them too. So we got food forests and we have orchards, and we see the benefits of both because they're all, but I don't know if somebody said you could only have this one thing and that's what you're going to, I don't know what I would pick. I'd probably get with the trees. Mostly because if somebody said, yeah, you had to pick one thing, I think I would favor the trees because it can all be done right there. From a tree, it can provide for not just one tree, but all the trees. It can really supply everything you need. Most people, and from a survival standpoint, they overlook the fact that the hardest thing to find in nature is fat. But the right trees can provide that, whether it be nut trees or in the right places, maybe you have avocados or anything like that. A tree can really supply everything, your protein, if done right, your carbs, your fat. Not too many things out there can do it. And you know what? I don't have to chase it down. It's right there. It's, if I just treat it right and manage it right, if I had to pick one thing, it would definitely be the trees. I'm not saying that just because I'm standing in front of Mr. Permaculture Orchard himself.
Well, I asked you that because of your biggest delight is moving the animals. And I do find it's important that people understand at least that distinction. Because if I've dealt with a lot of people, they want to move out to the country. Okay, why? Well, I just want to get out of the city. So it's moving away from rather than moving towards. But even if you do want to move, what are you going to do there? How are you going to make a living? What is it that attracts you? So I think a lot of people have a romantic view without having a realistic view. And I find the simplest to start with is, what do you prefer, animals or plants? Just that, because you can crop both, but which one will you gravitate towards? And I also add the people, because especially if you want to do any direct marketing, it doesn't have to be you, but somebody has to be the people person, because anytime you're selling something, you're going to be dealing with people.
Well, then to that point, that's part of why we don't really sell anything in terms of, we give it away. The only thing that we sell things through YouTube and some of the others, but none of us are good salesmen. We're awful salespeople. We really are. And I want products that kind of sell themselves. So we make bone sauce, which is a deer repellent made popular by the great Sepp Holzer. We make our version of it. It's very powerful, very strong. So we got that. We sell comfrey. We sell a few other items, rice knives and things like that. But as far as, we want things that kind of sell themselves. We didn't feel like we wanted to peddle anything. And as far as the items on the farm that we could sell, we give away. So it's also it's a testament to how abundant these things can actually be. The ice cream place in town, they used our strawberries to make their sorbet. And so yeah, we get a greater benefit. Our honey that we produce, honestly, it is more valuable. This is going to sound absolutely strange. We have gotten more value out of a pound of honey than we ever did out of a pound of gold. And we've traded, there's something very personal about giving somebody honey that you produced. We give that away, and then next thing you know, we get, 20 cubic yards of triple ground aged mulch that people are paying a fortune for. Just with a
pound of honey,
because they were so taken. So it's like we were talking earlier, it's one thing about knowing the price of everything and the value of nothing, but that value to so many people in terms of honey, I can't even, and just bartering, whether it's something you made, it's like we get way more value out of it by giving it away than by selling it. So it all comes, you got to make a living doing certain things, but we're just not interested in having to go to farmers markets or anything like that. If they buy it on our websites and if it's of use to you, then wonderful. If not, then maybe our value to you is just the information we provide.
Speaking of your websites, which ones would you like people to go check out?
Sure. I'll leave that to a person who's more tech driven.
We have Permapastures Farm is our website, permapasturesfarm.com. We've got our YouTube channel, Permapastures Farm. We've got the Permaculture Pimpcast, which is the podcast that Billy and William do, our son William.
Yeah, and that Pimpcast, and then you mentioned the Instagram, right?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Okay.
And then we also have Permapastures Farm Instagram.
Yep. So we're kind of hitting it when talking to you. We're realizing there's some ways in which we could probably do things more effectively. And I never even thought about reaching out to Twitter because I thought it was like a political platform or something like that. So
That's X now.
X, okay, yeah. Guess I'm a walking anachronism. I still thought it was called Twitter. So
It's in the process of changing. All of that, which one thing would you like to, basically, if you say, if people could grasp this or grasp that you found useful, or that you just think, okay, you know what, you're a lot on media. Which one element that you think, you know what, I could drive that home one more time, what would it be?
as far as a media element,
Yeah.
I would say without a doubt, YouTube is our most popular, but
No, I mean a lesson
What
What-
do you want people?
to remember you by, or remember that, you'd say, wow, yeah, here's the one thing I'd want people to grasp, because you are teaching, you are showing people, and you're doing different things.
that's pretty difficult for me to figure out as far as a permaculture concept or as far as anything.
Yeah, whatever. You are showing people a lot of things. Is there something that you'd say, or you, Michelle, because you're in there as well?
Well, I think a couple things, like education, just like people are going to have to. Education is important. I mean, we've learned a lot just from you, and it's like finding quality education, and like when you find it, there's so many aha moments that you have, and it might not just be through YouTube. Like you might have to go to people's places to learn this, because I mean, YouTube is great, but being on people's farms and learning from them, paying them, if you have to pay them for their time to learn this stuff, it's invaluable. Like, and also, like, you're going to have to put in the work, and it's not all going to be on a sunshine day when it's 70 degrees out either.
I think I think I would echo that. I mean, we've put a lot of effort into, and it's not just paying for a course, which is important a lot of times. It's not just paying for it. You got to put it to work. We've spent a lot of money on education, and you name it. Instead of sending our son off to college, we sent him off to Australia, okay? Or we sent him off to the Earthship Academy, or we sent him off to work with Joel Salatin. And now he has a PhD understanding about a lot of things at a very young age that he couldn't have obtained otherwise. And a lot of it at the end of the day meant taking it from a book, a classroom, your mind, and putting your hands on it and physically doing it, and then having something to show. So yeah, if there's one thing she mentioned education. I'm going to take one of my biggest failings, and I mentioned earlier, is finding the right relationships and not seeing because it can cost you everything, and it has me more than once. I mean, we've lost. I'm technically retired now, but if we had back to hundreds of thousands of dollars we've lost in my bad decision making because I trusted people that I shouldn't have, I would definitely say, if you have another half that's a little more in tuned to the full intent of people, or whether or not they're people you ought to listen to them, because I cost myself big time by not listening to the extent that I should have. So that's one thing on this journey. And then also realizing you don't need an entire army to go out there and do this. You could be growing, you're no less a farmer growing mushrooms in your closet than you are having a 30-acre orchard. You're another farmer, you're just doing it your own way. Or maybe you just got a few chickens in the backyard. You're still a farmer. Like Joel Salatin teaches, what makes a farm? The farmer. So don't feel like you have to have a whole constellation of animals out there. Start simple, start small, start with anything. Start with the mushrooms in your closet. Start, if you have to, buying apples from a place like you. Maybe you're good at the value adding section. Maybe you make really awesome apple butter. Maybe you make some really good apple cider. Maybe some hard cider. There's all these little nuanced things within everything where everybody thinks, well, I don't have the wherewithal to go out and do all this work. Well, maybe you take a piece of it. Maybe you like blueberries. Maybe that's where you start. Start with the little simple things, master that, and see if it leads into something that makes a little more sense for you. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe you want to go back to the city. But I think you point out something very profound there where we should all lose this notion of escapism and run toward something instead of away from something. Then maybe we'd have less buyer's remorse. maybe that would have been a solution for me early on.
Well, Billy, Michelle, it's been great to start off this series with you two. And I think we could finish by saying an important lesson was to just start. Just do it. And I'm glad we just started the Permaculture Orchard Podcast, and we'll see you next time.